Long time, no video. So, where have I been this past couple of weeks? What's happened? Well, I'll tell you what's happened. Something quite major's happened, and I wanted to make a video about this for weeks, but I've been suffering from the usual spell of fatigue and tiredness, the lack of motivation to make a video, because it's really difficult for me to work up the motivation to go out and make a video, especially given my current situation. You know how it is. I won't elaborate on that any more than I have currently, because I've already made loads of videos where I complain about that. But anyway, oh yeah, and also I tried making this video at least twice, but for one reason or another, the video couldn't record fully. Like, the video didn't record properly. The first time, it was because my phone ran out of battery power. The second, it was because I was recording it from the inside of my car on a hot summer's day, and the phone lost its power because of the heat. The heat cooked the battery, and the phone stopped working. It's the again, it's the machinations of the conspiracy. The cosmic conspiracy is at work, preventing me from making these videos. All right, anyway, enough preamble. So, where have I been? What's happened? Well, a couple of weeks ago, this was on the evening of the evening of Wednesday, June the 24th, I got involved in my first ever proper car accident. Now, before you say anything, don't worry, I wasn't injured. I didn't suffer any cuts or bruises. I wasn't injured even in the slightest. Don't worry about me. But, sadly, the same could not be said for my car. My car has been damaged extensively, and currently, at the time of me recording, it is no longer roadworthy. I'm going to show you a quick film clip just to give you an idea of how much damage was dealt to it. So, this happened while I was working a shift at Domino's, right? I just delivered a pizza to somebody's house in and I was making my way back to the office, and I was coming up to hill, and I was near a side road, and out of nowhere, this white company van, this white Vauxhall Vivaro, which I think wanted to turn left into the side road, had just come out of nowhere, trying to join the side road without noticing that I was there first. And he T-boned me. He crashed right into the driver's side door of my car. So the first thing I did, I pulled up and parked on the left-hand side of the road and got out. In all honesty, I was completely bewildered. You don't know this kind of thing can happen until it finally does. Until then, it's something that you hear a lot about, something you keep in the back of your mind because you've probably read or heard stories about it. Perhaps you've heard stories of it happening to people you know, like your friends or your family. But then when it happens to you for the first time, I mean, I had to blink, and I sort of mentally, I froze for a moment because I couldn't really process that this was happening. I thought, oh my goodness, this is happening to me now. A car's just crashed into me. And I wasn't really sure, in addition to my initial confusion as to what happened, I wasn't even sure how it happened or whose fault it was. Because an important detail that I should get out of the way is that it was an extremely hot day. It was in the middle of the summer heat wave. We've been having a lot of summer heat waves recently, but yes, this was in the middle of. Funny thing, one of the most recent videos I uploaded, the last video I uploaded, I was complaining about the heat. I was making my way down hill. And I was complaining about how my car doesn't have any air conditioning, and it is so hot currently that even when I pull down both car door windows for the driver and passenger side door and I race down the hill, there's no difference overall between the outside air and the indoor air temperature. They're both the same, because that's how hot it was. And yes, even though this accident happened about 8 o'clock, it was still very warm that day. By my reckoning, I think the temperature must have been somewhere between 30 and 35 degrees Celsius. So, and anyway, I honestly, if there's one thing experience has taught me, it's really hard to concentrate on being a good driver when you're assailed by the summer heat. You know, heat is kind of a hazard because it wears you down. It saps away at your energy. This is especially true if you're driving an old jalopy vehicle with no air conditioning, which I was. Oh, and also not to mention, I'd barely gotten a couple of hours sleep from the previous night because, again, I'm sharing the lounge of my grandparents' house with my younger brother. We don't have any air conditioning or anything. We had all the windows and doors open, but it was so hot, I didn't get to sleep until around 4 or 5 a.m. So there we go. I was extremely hot and I was extremely tired. So I wasn't sure at first who was to blame. Anyway, going back to the accident, the first thing I did, I pulled up on the left-hand side of the road, got straight out my car, and spoke to the chap who crashed into me. And he was profusely apologetic. You know, right there and then, the way he behaved, you know, he was dead certain that he was the one who was at fault. First thing we did was we exchanged each other's names and mobile phone numbers. I got a picture of his vehicle's rear registration number plate. And I called my manager and let him know what had happened. And one positive of being involved in an accident is I got to go home early. I mean, when your car's been totaled, you might as well just... every cloud has a silver lining, and given how hot and exhausted I wasn't in a great mood to carry on working for the rest of the day, so it was a minor victory. I'll take it. And I drove my vehicle back home. Now, because of how insurance works, nobody likes to be in a position where they have to admit they were at fault in the case of a car accident. Insurance prices are already pretty expensive, and they increase if they know that you're a risky driver. And I wanted to do the reasonable thing when this accident first happened. I wanted to discuss and see if it was possible that we could resolve the other driver and me, if we could resolve this issue without letting it go to insurance. Because he seemed very reasonable and charming at first. I mean, he apologized profusely once he got out the vehicle. The way he spoke to me, it seemed there and then he was fully cognizant of the fact that the accident happened mainly due to a mistake that he had made. And the way I had it figured, it was an extremely hot day. Perhaps he was also driving a vehicle with no working air conditioning, and he was also feeling the stress of the long working day and in the late June summer heat wave like I was. Maybe he'd only had a few hours worth of sleep. You know, moments like this, they tend to make you more considerate towards other people, I think. So I wanted to see... Oh yeah, and there and then, at the scene of the accident, as we were discussing things, he offered to pay me £1,000. He offered to pay me £1,000 to cover the damage for my car and get it working again. I mean, it was a nice offer, but I assured him I had to at least assess the damage first. I had to take my vehicle to an auto shop, have a mechanic look at it, and give me a realistic estimate as to how much it would cost to get a new car door and a new wing mirror and get them fitted. Because that's the thing. He had, the way he damaged my vehicle was, he drove into it. It was at a T-bone angle, and he crashed into the driver's side door, causing considerable cosmetic damage, not just to the door, but also the wing mirror had been broken off. So that's the thing. My car was no longer legally roadworthy because I can no longer check my right. I can no longer check what's behind me on my right side. Obviously, any policeman sees me driving a car in that like that in its current state, is going to pull me over. So I needed a realistic estimate as to how much it would cost to get that all sorted and repaired. So the next morning, I resolved to do exactly that. I took my old car down to the nearest auto shop, and the chap spoke with me, and he advised me that if I had chosen to take it through to insurance, they would probably have written off my vehicle right there and then, because my vehicle it's over 20 years old. It's a 2006 Ford Fiesta. The parts that they used to manufacture the car are no longer in circulation, and insurance companies, they tend to be lazy. You know, they take the option that gives them the least amount of work. However, on the other hand, I could just go on eBay. There's a lot of old used car parts you can find on eBay, relatively cheaply too, I might add, because there are people out there with obscure niches in collecting old car parts. There are car dealerships that exist and use the internet to to distribute their parts. There's all kinds of niches that exist due to the internet. So just for slightly over £100, the man told me, I could get a new car door and a new right wing mirror. I could have both parts fitted and installed for, say, another 100. So all in all, he reckoned it would cost slightly upwards of £200 by his reckoning and by my reckoning there at the time. So, that being the case, I spoke to the other driver. His name was by the way, that's what I'm going to call him from here on out. I spoke with and I updated him on the situation. Now, over the next few days, we were in discussion, and we were discussing how we were going to resolve repairing the damage to my vehicle. As I said earlier, from the beginning, I wanted to do this fairly and squarely. I was reluctant at first to take this up to insurance because he seemed like a swell guy. He obviously didn't intend to crash into my vehicle. He wanted to, and he offered to pay me £1,000 there and then. And I wanted to spare him the indignity of having his insurance premiums go up for crashing into my vehicle. And even worse, it wasn't even his van, it was a company van he was driving. So it could have been the case that his company would have to charge him more money because he'd be a riskier employee or driver. So I wanted to spare him from all that at first. But as the days dragged on, there were problems that started to emerge. So the first warning is that on the very day that the incident happened, he promised that he'd give me £1,000. But over the next few days, once a few days had passed and I'd explained everything to him, he revised his figure downwards from 1,000 to 1 or 200. So he was just going to be reimbursing me for the car parts and getting them installed and all that. That was the first problem. The second problem is he was pretty insistent that we get my car repaired his own way, because he had this mate of his who owned allegedly an auto shop in Sandown, which is sort of which is on the eastern side of the island, and he was insistent that I drive my car, that I take my car all the way down to his mate's auto shop. And I asked him, but do you think that this friend of yours, do you reckon he can fix my car up in less than a week's time, and that he can get his hands on those car parts that I need? And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. And I was a little uncertain what to make of that, because even though, yes, I was technically able to find the requisite car parts that would be needed to fix my car, it just struck me as a little strange that he was so overconfident, that he was so confident that his friend could do the same before he even knew what kind of car it was. Like, it felt like I was being influenced into making a decision without being 100% sure of it first. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned, how was I going to get my vehicle in its current state all the way over to Sandown? Sandown is basically 5 miles away from where I live currently. And as I mentioned, the vehicle's not roadworthy. There's no way I can drive it from here to Sandown, which is a 5-mile drive, without getting pulled over and stopped by the police, because I don't have a right wing mirror. And not to mention, I don't feel safe driving that thing. I'm probably going to cause another accident. Another accident's going to happen if I drive without being able to see what's in my right rear view. Unless he had a pickup truck, that was another glaring problem. But the third problem, the entire time that and I were discussing the issue, but the entire time that we were discussing the issue, everything we had said was done via oral contract, word of mouth. Nothing was written down. There were no legal agreements or whatsoever that we were made to sign. This is important for me for you to bear in mind, because any agreement that isn't explicitly written down, or that doesn't have any professional legal witnesses, can easily be exploited and has no legal weight. This is important because I have an uncle on my father's side who, for many years, over a decade, he's kind of been a stranger to our family because of a fallout, because of a disagreement over him and my father regarding the fate of this property which my grandmother used to own. See, my grandmother on my father's side passed away over 10 years ago, and there was a question as to what would happen to her house and who would get to inherit it, because theoretically it should have been evenly split between my father and my uncle. But there was no, obviously, my dad and his brother didn't originally set out to screw each other over, but there was no written, formalized agreement that was written down between either of them. The facts of the case are too lengthy and complicated and legalistic for me to get into here, and truth be told, I'd have to go and ask Mum what happened exactly. But the long and the short of it was, we'd ended up materially in a worse situation than we were previously, and he had benefited from the arrangement. He now owns the house in question. I'm not even sure what we got out of that deal, But the fact of the matter is, the deal wasn't written down. There was no kind of executor of a will. There was no solicitor that was tasked with supervising and going over the will and how the property was transferred and how who got ownership of what. And ever since then, for a very long time, my uncle, he's been a stranger to our family, and my mother's hated his guts for the longest time. He's just been an outsider, and to this day, I think I've been the only bridge between our family and him and his. I've been the only one who still, even now, keeps talking to him. Anyway, this all happened because of an agreement over a serious legal matter for which there was an informal arrangement. So anyway, that is why I was reluctant to proceed with this informal agreement. As I mentioned earlier, had revised his figure that he was willing to give me from 1,000 all the way down to a few hundred. He was stubbornly insistent that I have my vehicle repaired via his way, through his friend who owned his auto shop. And by the way, I went on the internet and looked up the address of his mate's auto shop, and it didn't look. Technically there was a web page for it, but it only had a handful of reviews. Only 8 last I checked. There was no picture of it anywhere that I could look to see it. There was no image that appeared on Google Maps or anything. I couldn't even find a name that belonged to the page, the name of who the auto shop supposedly belonged to. So it just seemed a bit risky. Oh, and also, actually, the most important thing was, at one point, I mentioned to that if we were going to resolve this, I would also, due to the fact that my vehicle was no longer roadworthy, I would need to be compensated. I'd need some kind of compensation for all the hours of work that I would be missing out on due to my vehicle having no longer being roadworthy. Because I can't use my vehicle anymore, and I work 2 jobs, both as a mobile carer and as a pizza delivery man. So there's so I would need some form of money, to compensate me in the meantime. And upon hearing this, I'm not sure how this happened, but at one point he seemed to suggest that I may have been at fault for the accident, which is something I really didn't prepare myself for, because at the time on the day this accident happened, the way he acted, he was pretty dead certain there and then that he had crashed into my car. And by the way, if you look at the photos of the damage that was done to my car, there's no question he was at fault, because it's not possible for me to have crashed my car into his car when you judge the angle of where it was hit and where his van was hit. So I don't know how he figured that I could be at fault, but that little admission, that little slip of the tongue, what that had opened my eyes to is that if we continue down this path of this informalized arrangement, I'm leaving myself open, I'm leaving myself vulnerable to getting screwed over. I'm putting myself at the mercy of a complete stranger who probably is far more knowledgeable about these matters, about, vehicles. He was clearly, very much, I don't want to sound prejudiced when I say this, but he clearly came from a working class background. He was probably in his late 30s or possibly 40s. He was a tradesman. I think he was an electrical fitter. he had a mate who ran an auto shop. He probably understood the business of fixing and repairing cars a lot better than I did. So if there are any kind of legal caveats or any sort of shortcuts that he or his friend could resort to that would end up him saving money, but me ending up materially poorer in the long term, or basically if there was any means he would have available that could exploit me or, you know, take unfair advantage of me, he'd be in a position to do that, and all I would have was his word that he would be able to fix my car in a reasonable manner. So the more days we spent discussing how we were going to resolve this, the more it occurred to me that I was way out of my depth. I didn't know my arse from my elbow. I did not have a background in fixing cars, in being a mechanic, or insurance law, or anything like that. It was wearing me down. It was wearing away my strength, the uncertainty of knowing what was going to happen and how. So, at the end of that week, I believe it was on Sunday, after much discussion with my uncle, who I mentioned earlier, and my grandparents and my family, my extended family, I'd eventually come to a decision. I was going to file an insurance claim via my workplace insurance. And I sent him a lengthy text saying, I've changed my mind. Here's the reasons why. I'm sorry, but my decision's final. Please don't try to challenge my decision. Now, on the subject of insurance, I began to realize, actually, I must have always known this for quite some time. You know, I talked about this at great length when I made my Luigi Mangione video, but insurance companies, they love fine print. They love fine details. Like, they never miss a trick. There's always any avenue they can take that will save money. Anything they can use that will inconvenience you at any turn, they will resort to it in a heartbeat. Initially, I tried calling my regular car insurance company, Hastings Direct, which is the company that supplies me with my social, distance, and pleasure insurance. That's the normal car insurance that most drivers have to use to drive a car. All drivers are legally required by law to have social, distance, and pleasure. I was also insured on Hastings to use my vehicle for business purposes, which I needed if I was to be a mobile carer. But would you believe it? There's a third kind of insurance you need, specifically if you want to deliver hot food. And that insurance specifically, I can't remember, what is it called? Hot food insurance or food insurance, something like food delivery insurance. I was not insured to deliver food on that vehicle with Hastings. That insurance was a separate, insurance package that was given to me by Domino's when I'd signed up with them. But anyway, because of that, due to this, when I'd initially spoken to Hastings about this, when they picked up based on my statement that I had been working for Domino's at the time and I'd been delivering pizzas, the first thing they did was they contacted me and said, sorry, we're not going to be able to help you with anything on this because you were delivering food and that's something that your insurance doesn't cover. It's just so petty. Like, first off, why does there need to be a separate insurance package for first of all, for using your vehicle for business purposes, but second, for using it to deliver food? What if you want to use your vehicle to deliver food as a business? Like, why can't they amalgamate those two things into one? Why does there have to be a separate insurance policy required for this thing and then that thing and then this thing? It's just so stupid. I swear to God, I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out there was an additional insurance policy you needed to deliver to use your vehicle as a taxi service. There probably is, although don't quote me on that. I'll have to check that up later. But it's just so stupid. There's just so many different rules. Is it any wonder that fewer people are learning to drive when it's this complicated and there's so many different insurance packages you need? There's just so much red tape, and it pisses me off. It especially pisses me off that even in this case, this is a minor gripe that I have in the grand scheme of things, right? But it annoys me that they looked at the facts of the case as I presented them in my statement, Hastings, and straight off the bat, they declined to take they stopped, they immediately disregarded any claim I might have been entitled to, any legal entitlements to me making a claim based solely on the grounds that I was delivering hot food. I didn't even have any hot food in my car at the time.
Computer says no.
Anyway, that's just the thing that pisses me off. Anyway, luckily, because I was insured to deliver hot food via my workplace insurance with a different company, I filed a claim through my delivery company insurance. And the next few weeks subsequent, the next two subsequent weeks of my claim getting processed were some of the most difficult and testing periods. That waiting period was one of the more difficult and testing periods in recent memory, because I was on edge the entire time. I was on edge for the following reasons. First of all, soon after I had filed my claim, the other party, he disputed liability, which in a way I half expected him to do, because I was right not to trust him. Straight when the accident had happened, he came up to me like he was 100% sure he was responsible for the crash. But then he sort of wavered and changed his mind at numerous points when when he brought up the fact that I might have been responsible. He said this in spite of the fact that he had a dash cam recording the entire time, which he could have gotten out and watched whenever he wanted. So whatever the outcome of the case could have been, he knew it from the start. So anyway, that's in hindsight, I'm glad that I chose not to go down his route of getting my vehicle repaired. Anyway, he disputed liability. So now the claim was going to go to adjudication. They were going to have independent experts look at the pictures, look at the evidence, and assess the damage. And this part in particular, I mentioned earlier, this was one of the most stressful periods in recent memory. There was so much riding on the outcome of this adjudication, because you got to understand, my vehicle in its current state was unroadworthy, so I couldn't use it to work either of my two jobs. I was thousands of pounds, and I was thousands of pounds worth. I was in thousands of pounds worth of credit card debt. And I didn't even mention, as I mentioned earlier, I was insured to deliver hot food via my workplace delivery insurance, but it was third party only. So essentially what that meant is, if I was found to have been at fault for this claim, my insurance would have only covered the damages to his van, not to mine. And I would have had to have used my own money to recover my vehicle out of my own pocket. I would have been in so much shit if that had happened. There's something else I was going to say, but I can't remember. What was that other thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, no. Another thing which I should have mentioned earlier, but forgot. You see, being in an accident, and I've learned. I think this is largely the case if you're involved in a severely traumatic incident, like you've been the victim of a crime, or you've witnessed a crime occur, or if you've witnessed an accident happen, or if you've been involved in one. A thing that I've heard about this enough times to think that it's probably more common than we give it credit for, is that the impact, the psychological imprint that this sudden shift in normality, the imprint that it leaves upon your mind and your consciousness, it hits you with such intensity, especially if you're not paying attention. I learned that it meddles with your perceptual memory of events. It messes around with your memory, and it causes you to misremember certain details. Like you may discover, what I'm saying is, you may come to discover that if you get involved in a car accident, or if you end up finding that you're the victim of a crime, or you witness a crime, you may find that your memory, your visual memory or your auditory memory, is not 100% reliable, and you might misremember or confabulate certain facts or details. I say this because, as I was making my way back, and as I was explaining everything that had happened to my grandparents, the accident that I'd just been involved in, there were two key facts about the crash, about the accident, that I was so sure about, but which I had remembered wrong. Two key facts that my own memory had gotten wrong. First of all, for some reason, I had mistakenly believed that the van had reversed into me, that he had reversed into the right driver's side door of my vehicle. I'm not sure how I came to that conclusion, because it seems like you would know the difference between if a van was reversing into you or if it was driving head-on into your driver's side door. You'd think you'd know. And yet, for some reason, my own brain had somehow convinced me that he had reversed. That was the first thing, mind. The second key detail that my brain had misremembered was the specific name of the road that I was driving down. No, it wasn't the name of the road. The whole location, the location where the scene of the accident was totally different to how I remembered it. I say this because days after the accident had taken place, out of curiosity, I took a bus trip right round to the scene where I was certain the accident had taken place, where the accident was, at least to me, fresh in my mind. There are two roads, as I'll demonstrate on this map. This one is... I can't remember the names of the roads, but when the accident had occurred, there and then, I was so certain that it had happened on this road. But when I revisited the scene of the crime, I found that I'd taken a picture of the driver's rear license plate, and I was trying to recreate or stage the photo so that it was exactly as I'd taken it on the day this happened, but I wasn't able to. And furthermore, I had this specific little this location tracking app on my phone called Life 360, which is something that my family generally use whenever we're not sure, say, when mum's going to be back from shopping, or where somebody is when they say they've gone out, things like that. There's a feature in Life 360 that allows you to retrace your steps, that lets you go back in time and see which routes you've taken, where and when. And using Life 360, I had to download a free trial for premium mode, which let me access the previous week's record of my driving. And I found that based on the evidence that I had uncovered with my Life 360 app, it had happened in a different location. It had happened in an entirely different location to the one that I had previously believed it had. All the evidence seemed to suggest that the accident in question had happened on a different road. There was a yellow symbol on Life 360 which signals that I had braked my vehicle sharply. So basically, all the evidence was pointing to the fact that the accident had actually happened somewhere entirely different to how my own visual memory had recollected. This in addition to the fact that I initially believed my memory had mistakenly led me to believe his van had reverse crashed into me. So, bearing these two worries in my mind, I was really nervous and unsure what to think or what to expect as I was waiting for the results of the adjudication. Because if my own brain had tricked me into falsely recollecting these two vital pieces of information, what other facts were there that my brain could have been lying to me about? What else was it likely that I could have misremembered? Is it entirely possible that I could have been the one at fault for this accident? And if so, how deep in shit was I going to be? So as you can imagine, these questions were weighing down heavily over me for the remainder of the month, and for the rest of the month, and from then till early July. I had all this weighing me down. I really wasn't sure what was going on or how I was going to get out of this. Especially considering the other party, as he mentioned, he did have a dashcam recording. And the way I had it figured is he would not have disputed liability in this insurance claim if he didn't have some grounds, at least in his opinion, if he didn't have some grounds for legally contesting the claim, or some evidence that would indicate he wasn't at fault. So I was thinking, oh God, oh shit, oh Jesus. Maybe I should have just taken his deal after all. Maybe I should have just accepted the £1,000 there and then. Oh God, what have I got myself into? Anyway, eventually, finally, at long last, I did get a call back from my workplace insurance. And fortunately, it was such a relief to hear back from them. They confirmed to me that they had accepted that I was not liable, and I was not at fault for this claim, and he was. And soon after, I received a follow-up call from a vehicle hire company who were going to be supplying me with a hire car until I'd accepted the insurance payout. That's right, because I'd also received an assessment and quote of how much money it would cost to repair the damages for my vehicle, and what can I say? It was so much better than I was expecting. It was more than what that chap had offered me. It was a very generous sum of money. It was more than double the amount of money that I had personally paid to get this car. It was a second-hand car, and And really, honestly, in my opinion, it's nowhere near worth that much. So you couldn't imagine just how happy and how much relief I was in to receive this email. And yes, going back to what I said earlier, I also got a phone call from a vehicle hire company telling me they were going to be supplying me with a vehicle, a hire car, at least until I'd accepted the money and I was able to repair the damage to my vehicle. Speaking of which, I am sitting in it right now. And take a look. It is a really nice car. It's a 2022 Hyundai i30. Is it Hyundai or Hyundai? I'm never sure how to pronounce this. But look, it's got a nice stereo system that works via Bluetooth. It's got a nice, steering wheel with a comfortable... Is that leather? I'm going to call it leather because I don't know what else it's called. Leather grip. It's nice and clean. It's brand new. I mean, it's a model that came out about 5 years ago. Oh, and the best part, you want to know the best part about this car? It has working air conditioning. And that is something that I cannot appreciate enough in the midst of this summer heat wave. The main reason why we had that accident, I'd ended up in the middle of that car accident in the first place. Anyway, so currently this is where I'm at with regards to the accident. I'm in the process of I'm about to accept the claim and proceed with it. My workplace insurance is going to contact workplace company insurance with a quote for the damages to my car, and they may either accept and agree to pay the damages or they may dispute the damages, in which case I'm not sure what happens if that happens, or they might offer a different figure. They might offer a different quote. But anyway, I'm waiting to hear back from whether they've agreed to pay the sum of money, and once they do, and once the money enters my account, within 5 working days, I have to give this lovely, beautiful Hyundai back to the vehicle repair company, the vehicle hire company, and I'm going to be £1,400 richer. I mean, who would have thought? Who would have thought getting into a car accident like that could end up being one of the best things that ever happened to me? I actually want to call that guy who crashed into me and buy him a beer, because this turned out much better than I could have expected, honestly. I mean, this is a great car. I'm gonna miss this car once I have to give it back. If I could afford it, I'd definitely see if I could get, maybe I could get a finance deal for a car like this, a Hyundai i30. It has, it has all the bells and whistles of most modern cars, and really this car makes me happy to drive to work and back. I mean, my shitty old car, my Ford Fiesta, I got that secondhand. My uncle was able to help me get this car, mainly because it was a cheaper alternative to the previous car I used to have. My dad's old Toyota Aygo, and my dad's old 2007 Toyota Aygo hatchback, which used to be his. I had a deep sentimental attachment to that car because it was my dad's car. It was the only thing I really inherited from him. But sadly, I had to have it scrapped because there was this vital vehicle component that had broken down, and it would have cost me a fortune to get fixed. Its mileage was well over 140,000. I mean, when I spoke to my uncle about this... Oh yeah, by the way, I don't know if I've made this clear, but my Uncle Carl, you know, the stranger, the outsider to my family, he's kind of the go-to man for when it comes to cars. You know, he's definitely the most knowledgeable, the most hands-on and practical of my extended family. So he's been the one who's been, he's been my main channel of communication about this. He's been the one giving me insurance about what to do and what not to do throughout this insurance claim. So I'm very grateful to him for his help. You know, without his help, I probably would have made a lot of mistakes on the way. Anyway, he's the one who was able to get me the Ford Fiesta. And I'm grateful that he was able to get me a relatively cheap car. But as goes the old saying, you get what you pay for. And this this Ford Fiesta, this 2006 Ford Fiesta Climate, it's a piece of crap. It's a jalopy car. It doesn't have working air conditioning. The seats are stiff and bad for my back. It doesn't look particularly appealing. It's not. Oh yeah, and the driver's seat is a nightmare. It's a bitch to fiddle around with if you want to adjust its height and everything. And honestly, there are some cars that are so nice you could lie asleep in them. I cannot lie asleep in that. It's just not. I don't ever want to set foot in that car unless I absolutely have to. So I'm not going to really, honestly, when the day comes where I end up having to scrap that car or get a new one, trade it in for a new one, I'm not really going to miss it. And this isn't even taking into account the nightmare it is to, you know, insert the Bluetooth dongle so I can listen to my favorite music on it. It's not very, like, I'd be kind of embarrassed if say I had a girlfriend, if say I'd found a lovely lady and I had to pull up on the side of the road and ask her to hop in. I'd be kind of embarrassed if I had to do that with something like that. I know it sounds incredibly petty for me to describe a car which my uncle, through his own tears and sweat, through his own hard work, he managed to get me, he managed to secure a good deal for me for. But really, I wouldn't have even been in that accident if I had a vehicle that had working air conditioning, if it wasn't such a damn bloody hot day, which it was. Gosh, anyway, so that's the situation that I'm in and have been in for the past month. I am waiting for the outcome of I'm waiting for the resolution of my insurance payout, because I don't know if I mentioned this, but yeah, my vehicle, my Ford Fiesta has been written off. But when I say it's been written off, like I said so earlier, insurance companies tend to be lazy. They tend to write off vehicles if the damage, if the cost required to fix a vehicle goes beyond the cost required to get a new one. They will typically just write it off. But what I'm thinking I might do is I'll accept the money, I'll get the vehicle repaired, I'll fix the right wing mirror. I probably won't even bother the damage with the cosmetic damage with the driver's side door, and I'll keep on using it in the meantime, being over £1,000 richer. Because really, that's probably the only good thing I would say about the Ford Fiesta. It can take a beating and it can make me money. And like I said, that guy who crashed into my shitty car, I owe you one. Maybe I should call you up and we can hang out and buy a drink. I mean, I'm not being totally serious, because he probably wanted to screw me over, but then I don't know that. Do I know that? I don't know. Anyway, that's basically it for an update. Sorry it's been ages since I've last made a video. I've been way more active on Twitter though these past few weeks, I will say. Again, I'm getting too psychologically addicted. I'm getting too hooked on Twitter. It's getting kind of a problem. It's getting kind of out of hand. And I'm posting way too much political stuff out there. It's getting... But anyway, Twitter is Twitter. This is YouTube. And I'm going to make videos mainly sort of about me and my personal life. And if you guys have been are interested in the details, there you are. That's basically where I've been. Anyway, goodness, it's been nearly an hour of me rambling on about this, about my accident. Hope you guys are doing okay. This has been Tracking. Hopefully I'll be back with more videos now that I've gotten this weight of a video. I've recalled this tale, gotten it off my chest. There's hopefully going to be more to come. So yeah, see ya.